Italian Football Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another interview episode of the Italian Football Podcast. My name is Nima Tavale Ruzzari, and I'm delighted today to be joined by the CEO and Managing Director of Serie A USA, Andy Mitchell. First of all, welcome to the show, Andy. How are you doing?
Ciao, Nima. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's really great to be here, and I really enjoy your show. So it's exciting for me to be here on my own.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Well, let's start with a little bit of an introduction for our listeners, a little bit about yourself and who you are and how it came to be, your background, and of course, how it came to be that the Italian Serie A chose you to be the CEO and Managing Director of Serie A USA.
Sure. So my background is in media. I worked in media my whole career. I worked at CNN for a decade and a half, and then I worked at Facebook from the early days of media through 2000. When did I leave there? About 2020. It has been, or 2022. So it's been a great ride in media. Big football fan. Big part of my job at Facebook was traveling to Europe and South America, and just started to understand the culture of football and how deeply it runs, through European and South American cultures, and was really smitten by the game. Look for ways that I can transition my career into football in some way. Met a lot of people, learned a lot about structures of leagues and teams, and try to think about where I could fit in. I had a colleague, Peter Hutton, who a lot of people in the industry know, who was a former CEO of Eurosport, who was a colleague of mine at Facebook. And so when Lega Serie A was looking for someone to help build their U.S. business, Peter referred me, which I deeply appreciate. And here I am. I've been here for about 9 months.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your interest in football and like how I mean, aside from getting into it at Facebook and stuff, do you have some sort of a personal relationship with the game, as soccer, as you guys call it in the US?
I played as a kid, like a lot of American kids, and like a lot of American kids lost interest. It just isn't a mainstream sport here. No. But I have a son. He's now 14, but when he was around 5, was thinking about things that we could do together. So we started going to some New York Red Bull games. But then NYCFC, which is part of the City Football Group, was started here in New York City. And I thought to myself, whoever gets to be the fan of a team from literally day one. And so my son and I, which I know is really looked down upon, we traded our allegiance from the New York Red Bulls, who really play in New Jersey, are more New Jersey's team, to New York City Football Club. We're city dwellers living in Brooklyn. So signed on for year one, and it's been great for us to share that interest. We're members. We go to all the matches with him and with friends, and then at the same time started to understand globally like I was mentioning, the culture of the sport. And by the end of kind of the early days of my interest, I had a team in almost every league around the world, and had a connection to each of those clubs. And again, just really fell down the rabbit hole. I spent more time than I'd like to admit reading articles, reading books, listening to podcasts, etc. Okay. Love the sport. I really think it's incredible. And really different from any of the American sports. And I really appreciate deeply, what soccer has come to mean to me.
So how many people do you have in your team that you've built? Because you guys opened up an office in New York, I think it was about a year ago, was it? Is that correct?
It'll be 2 years in May.
2 years, yeah.
Funny you asked. If you asked me last week, I would have said that we had 2 people. I can say as of today, we have 4 people. Actually, our 4th person started today. Okay. So we have an editorial function, we have a marketing function, and we have a commercial partnerships function. So those are really the 3 disciplines that we're focused on here. And we're really just getting started. I feel like we have a lot of good momentum over the last 9 to 12 months that I've been here. Really excited about some new initiatives, and looking ahead, I feel like there's a ton of opportunity for us to grow Serie A here in the U.S.
It absolutely is. And just to be clear on what your remit and responsibilities, I mean, you're the CEO and managing director. That would suggest to me that you're in charge of growing all of those 3 disciplines, and basically that you mentioned. Would that
Correct.
be correct? Yeah.
So the way I look at it, I look at our work across four primary dimensions. One is brand development. I feel like here in the U.S., especially given the success of Serie A in Europe, in the European competitions, UEFA says we're the number 2 or sometimes the number 3 league. Our brand doesn't get the attention it deserves here. So one is just how can we help people understand the level of football that's played in Italy. And the other thing when I think about brand that's really, really important is Italy gives us an incredible differentiator for, compared to the other European leagues. So Americans love Italy. We recently did some research. There are 51 million Americans that have an affinity for Italy here in the US. So really what I want to think about is ways that we connect culture to Calcio. So that's number one. Number 2 is audience development. So that is obviously getting more people to consume content from us. So that could be watching our matches on CBS Paramount Plus. That could be connected to our social channels. We recently launched an email newsletter that I'm really proud of called Calcio Weekly. So just generally, how do we get more people consuming content for Lega Serie A here in the US and across North America? 3 is commercial development. So we have the opportunity to bring on sponsors here and are working very hard on sponsoring some of our content franchises and other ways that we can bring commercial sponsors to bear here in the US. And then lastly is community. And so we've partnered with Street Soccer USA. We helped them build a pitch in the South Bronx of New York. We also built a Serie A media center there to teach kids about media. We did an event in Miami with Christian Pulisic and his team in Puma at the Pulisic Stomping Ground with some kids from the Little Havana section of Cuba. Sorry, the Little Havana section of Miami. Sorry about that. And so, really trying to be a good member of the community and get involved in the community here is also a priority of ours.
Well, that kind of answers my next question about the objective set to you by the Serie A. So I'm going to ask you would it be correct to assume then that the primary audience that you have in the United States is Americans with Italian heritage, the 51 million you mentioned? Those are primarily your primary target, and then secondarily the people, everyone else. Would that be correct?
Well, so sorry, just to clarify, the 51 million number was 50. That's Americans who have an affinity for Italy. So not necessarily Italian. So honestly, that's something I struggle with is how much we should be. It's almost like the political question, of like, do you focus on the base or do you feel like you've got the base and so therefore you spend your energies on expanding beyond your base? I think in a lot of ways, not to take them for granted, but the Italians and the Italian Americans, Serie A is in their blood. It's been passed down for generations. So they are fans that kind of, I feel like, are foundational for us. And so what I want to do is continue to double down on the base, but more importantly is how do we grow Serie A beyond the base and bring in fans? And that's why I think that connection to Italy, whether it be Italian food or fashion or culture or industry, travel, Americans love Italy. So how do we connect Calcio to those different parts of Italian culture so that we can showcase the beautiful game as it's played in Italy to a much broader set of Americans and people in North America to really grow the league.
Just to be clear, when you say North America, you're just specifically talking about the US and not Canada, right? Because
Canada's very important for us. And it was great to have Tajon Buchanan join the league a couple weeks ago. It's great to see him playing for Inter. But that's Canada and also Mexico. But U.S. is obviously the biggest market and the biggest opportunity for us. So I do spend the majority of my time thinking about the U.S., but Canada and Mexico are also very important for us, and we're trying to do different things to kind of grow there as well.
So they are part of your remit and responsibilities then?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Right. So I just wanted to, before we get into it, what do you think you would be? I mean, how do you think you'll be able to impact the image and brand of Italian football in North America?
So I think a lot of it is about awareness. I feel like, again, I don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over, but I think it's really important and really speaks to the strategy. really growing Calcio in the U.S. I think, riding the coattails of Italian culture broadly is the way to go. So you'll start to see us. We've already started, and this is really being driven out of Italy, but there's a new content series that we are doing in collaboration with the Italian trade agency called Champions Made of Italy.
Okay.
So there will be 20 different profiles of all the clubs in the league with different players talking about their experience in those cities, how those cities are different. I think the first 4 are out. The last one released was Salernitana with Ochoa. And so those are on YouTube, and you can also find them in the US here on Paramount Plus. And those will roll out over the course of the season. So that's a great way for us to showcase to Americans, what these 20 clubs are, where they are, what they're about, and how they're different.
Okay. Well, I mean, let's talk a little bit about how the Serie A is perceived outside of Italy. Many people, I mean, if we leave aside the results as such, but a lot of the things that, follow the Serie A is that it's a league in ruins in the sense that the stadiums are very, very old. It's run by very old mentality and kind of almost dinosaurs, and it's kind of been marketed pretty bad as well. I mean, first of all, do you agree with that? And secondly, what do you think you guys can do to change that perception, primarily in North America?
So I don't agree with that at all. I see day in and day out how hard and smart and strategic the people are that are doing the marketing for the league. And I've been really impressed with the people in Milan that we work with and the passion of the league. So I'm not sure where that perception's from. I haven't been here long enough to know, but I also know that, and I've heard it characterized this way, that after the success of the 90s, that the league kind of went to sleep for a while, but there's completely new leadership in Milan running the league day to day. And I wouldn't be here if I thought all the things that, all the perceptions that you said were true. I come from, having worked for Facebook and CNN back in the day, working for Ted Turner, pretty, I think, revolutionary products. And I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be betting my career if I didn't think that there was a lot of opportunity here in the US and if I didn't think it was a well-run organization.
That's fair. But, a lot of the perception has been that, for example, that there's been kind of a lack of strategy and maybe a lack of a kind of competent strategy to grow Italian football and stop it further falling behind from like the likes of Premier League, who are, let's be honest, the gold standard in world football. I mean, financially, sportingly, bureaucratically, we keep falling behind. I mean, I think, for example, the TV deals that have plummeted in the last years in the right cycles around the world, and it happened also recently with the domestic TV rights deal too. So surely that must be a problem, no?
Well, I mean, the Premier League is doing incredible work, so hats off to them, and it's been great to see their success. I feel like their success really creates, the rising tide lifts all boats, and I think it creates an opportunity for us to, as another European football league, to raise the profile here. And I think just more people interested in football, again, creates more opportunity for all the other leagues, and then couple that with the fact of Americans' affinity for Italy and Italian culture. And I think that really gives us a leg up on the other leagues. But I think we've all got a lot of headroom to grow here in the US, and there's a high ceiling. We see the game growing, consistently year over year. And then, I think if history is a guide, or an order of magnitude, more people are going to be interested in football as we get closer to the World Cup. And what my job is to make sure that Lega Serie A is in the consideration set of people, and they know who we are. They know what's different and interesting and unique about Serie A, and that's the way we grow the fan base here.
Fair enough. But I mean, a lot of the things, let's just say, would you accept that until now, perhaps before you started, maybe the Serie A has been, it's been kind of unable to connect successfully with a modern outside world in terms of marketing and growing the brand? I mean, if we were to compare with the Premier League, not saying that, they've done, that we should be jealous of them or anything like that. I'm just saying, comparing to how they have succeeded and what they've done to succeed, would you accept that maybe the Serie A has not been able to do that in its own way, so to speak?
Well, I think it's fair to say that certainly the Premier League is setting the pace. But I feel very confidently saying that we've got a great strategy. And, looking back, is there things that the league could have done differently? Of course, but you could say that about everything. Hindsight is 2020. What I want to do is really look forward and see what we can do to raise the profile, get more fans, really start to build a business here in North America.
Well, let's talk about moving forward and looking forward, because obviously you've been there for 9 months, and so it's difficult to kind of ask you about things that happened prior to your joining the organization. I would like to ask you, looking forward, what plans do you have now to grow? Because the Serie A marketing, many times, especially on social media, I mean, up until now, recently, well, it was barely written in intelligible English many of the times. It was the grammar just wasn't there, and a lot of weird stats like average apex height graphic that keeps being used, and people are confused. So what can we expect moving forward now from Serie A in order to do all the things that, the high levels, that the high goals that you've set for yourselves?
Yep. So, I think social is obviously a focus for us. We relaunched the North American channel about 3 months ago. We rebranded it so it's clear that it's for North American fans. So we changed it. It was that Serie A. Mm-hmm. I think to your point, it wasn't clear who that was for and kind of how it was different. So
that's on Instagram, right?
That's on Instagram, correct. So we rebranded it to Lega Serie A_North America. Mm-hmm. So it's clear who we're programming for, and it's complementary to kind of how they're programming the Instagram and other social channels in Milan. And we recently launched a series that's performing very, very well for us that I'm really happy about, that we call Weekend Calcio. It is not necessarily like a wrap up of the weekend. More importantly, what we're trying to do is showcase the narratives and the people that are interesting coming out of each weekend's matches. So that's been performing very well for us. It's continuing to grow at a nice pace. We partner with an organization called Wave Sports and Entertainment, who owns the FTBL handle that's very popular. So they're helping us with distribution. So we also do some player profiles as part of that. And then we've been doing some news coverage as well. So the day that Tejan Buchanan signed, we did a quick turn news piece that performed extremely well. It's nice to watch that graph and see that big spike. And so I think programming our Instagram is, one of our strategic priorities. And I think we've already made some great headway there. I mentioned it earlier, but I think it's really important. We launched an email newsletter called Calcio Weekly. Mm-hmm. There's a podcaster that writes for that is on the Total Soccer Show, which is a very popular podcast here in the U.S., general football coverage. He was living in Rome and understood Italian culture. I was a regular listener to that show. And one of the ideas I had coming in the door, and my hypothesis was that if you're a Serie A fan in the U.S., or you're even Serie A curious, there's not necessarily a great place to find coverage of the league day in and day out. And so we are aggregating interesting content from around the league, giving people some background, some narratives to follow. So, for example, for the Supercopa, we help people understand the history of the cup, the background, why it is where it is, et cetera. And so Calcio Weekly has also been a great success for us. We're seeing continued growth and really happy about that. Definitely.
Is that just mainly on Instagram, or is it on YouTube? Or
that's our email newsletter.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
That comes every Thursday. Okay. We send it about 1 p.m. Eastern time.
And if people want to sign up to that, where do they go?
It's bit.ly/Calcio Weekly.
Okay.
And I can send you that link if you want.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. We definitely will want to include it, because I'm sure people would be interested.
Yep.
Just so I understand, because it seems to me a lot of that it seems to be a lot of focus on Instagram that you guys do. So is it correct to assume then that the Twitter handle and the Facebook handle that the Serie A has, it's run by people in Milan?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Are there any plans in you taking over and creating one for yourselves on those platforms, or are you just focusing on Instagram for the time being?
kind of one thing at a time. I feel like
Okay.
Instagram right now has the most scale,
Okay.
and I think it creates the most opportunity for us. And so, we're a small team, and I really want to, focus on the places where I think can move the needle for us and deliver impact. And I think Instagram is that place today. That being said, as I mentioned, we have somebody new here heading up content and editorial. And so I'll be
So who
working.
is that? I mean, would you mind naming who those are and introducing them to us a little bit? Those different people in charge of that.
Sure. So his name is Connor Lobenstein. He is not known in the world of football, but I really appreciated his background. He has got a top 20 has a top 20 podcast in the golf category. He's done a lot of sponsored and branded content, as well as social strategies for brands. So his background, I think, can really help us not only with consumers, but also can help us with some of our commercial aspirations. The person who joined us on the commercial side, his name is Alessandro Girardi. He joins us from NBC, where he worked on the Premier League business and helped NBC with their sales efforts around the Premier League, as well as their other sports. So he's going to help us a lot in the commercial area. He's also grew up in Bologna, came to the States for college, so he understands well Italian culture. But also at the same time, can bring, given his education in the U.S., a U.S. point of view to the work.
Mm-hmm. And then you said you were 4 people, including yourself, or was that?
Including myself. We also have a marketing manager. Her name is Jenna Ergo. She, again, Italian-American, grew up here in New York. So it's really nice for us to have the perspective in the office. And it's, a form of diversity that we've got, an American-American, 2 Americans,
Yeah.
An Italian-American and an Italian. And it really helps us kind of think about the different perspectives as we, strategize on new initiatives.
I read somewhere, I think about a year ago, that the person in charge who ran or founded and set up and ran the ICC International Champions Cup, Charlie Stilitano, was part of your team. Is that no longer true then?
No, Charlie's here. Charlie's with us. Charlie's a great asset for us. He's not here day to day. He serves as chairman of our office here, and he and I work really closely together. But he's a great asset. If there's anybody we ever want to talk to, Charlie knows everybody. He opens those doors.
Okay, cool. So it's basically safe to assume then that for the time being, at least, the focus is on growing the newsletter, and the social media channel that you're focusing on is Instagram. Would that be a safe assumption?
That is correct. That is fair.
Okay, cool. Fair enough. Do you have any other plans that you could maybe break for us? Because we saw the other day, I think it was Gravina, who said that in the future, entire rounds of the Serie A could be played abroad. He didn't mention a country, but it's not exactly difficult to understand if you look at where they've opened up offices that country could be the United States. Is that something that we can expect in the near future?
Not that I know of. I'm hopeful and optimistic that there will be opportunities for us to showcase Calcio in different ways here in the U.S. We already have the international or the Champions Soccer Tour. Last year we had Milan and Juve here on the West Coast. This year, watch for an announcement on where those matches will be and who will be participating. But I'm very excited about the potential for us to use Summer Tour to bring in new fans and to reach new audiences. It will be very high profile this summer, and we're excited about it. I was a little nervous because obviously there's a lot of fixture congestion across all the different international tournaments happening this summer, but they are going to be able to squeeze that in. So I'm really happy that we're going to have the opportunity to bring the Italian clubs here again this summer, and it should be an exciting time, kind of given who all the participants are.
One thing that on this podcast that we feel a little bit passionately about and also a little bit critical about is the fact that the Serie A seemingly only has to have a strategy for growing the league in around in North America. And I understand that, of course, this is in criticism of you. I mean, you've been hired to head up the North American office, but it seems that the Serie A is only focusing on North America and not really anywhere else. I mean, do you know of any other plans they have to maybe grow in Middle East, North Africa, China, other, maybe a Spanish speaking, because obviously Spanish is a world language just like English. Do you know of any plans to do that? Because it suggests to me that 400-500 million people in Canada, America, and Mexico the planet is 7 billion. Did you see what I'm saying? Like maybe grow, yeah.
Well, we have an office in Abu Dhabi, so we're covered in the Middle East and North Africa, and they focus there. And it's a really talented group of colleagues that I have over there. I've been very impressed with them. And one step at a time. So we are working to establish these offices. There are discussions about reaching out into new markets, but I think it's smart to not get overextended. Like, let's make sure that we can drive success and impact in the markets that we're already invested in, and then take that playbook and expand from there.
One thing that I've wanted, that I wish for the Serie A to do, and I'm kind of interested to hear your view on it, given your background, is, for example, to, instead of selling TV rights to regions, to basically create a global app and produce the product in-house in Spanish, English, Italian, and whatever language that you want to do, and then put the app like Netflix essentially and go directly to the customer via, which I think is kind of what's going to happen anyway. And I wish the Serie A would do it before the Premier League does it, because once they do it, I think they're going to dominate forever. Financially, that is. What are your thoughts on that? Would you agree with that?
I mean, it's an interesting idea, and certainly it's one way to go. I can tell you that having launched subscription businesses, it's very, very, very difficult from every perspective. Building a great consumer service, takes a lot of very talented engineers. That's very hard to come by. Customer acquisition can be very expensive. It would be a non-trivial effort. I'm not saying it's not smart and not a very sound strategy, but having done that before, no one should underestimate how hard that is. And we're seeing that today with the U.S. streaming services and how they're struggling. And they're huge media companies. So it would be a massive undertaking that would take a lot of years to build and get right.
That's fair. Let's talk a little bit about the football on the pitch. I want to know a little bit about your relationship to Italian football. Do you have a favorite club? Or do you have any favorite players?
So as a league official, I like all of the clubs. But I will say it's fun. I feel like in a lot of ways I was the luckiest guy in the world when I joined the league. We had one American player who was not playing at Milan and Serginho Dest. And so then, over the course of the summer, we brought in arguably 4 of the best American players. And then now having Tejan Buchanan, there's even rumors about another Canadian potentially coming to the league. So, I like to be selfishly for my job.
Well, of course.
I like to watch the American players succeed, and it's been really fun, watching Pulisic go from, clearly unhappy at Chelsea to watching him. It's just fun to watch him have fun and to watch him have fun on the pitch. So, all those guys, watching Musa and Weah and McKennie, it's been really, really fun to see those guys thrive in the league.
For sure. It's shaping up to be a Juve versus Inter title race for the first time in a generation. Do you think it's going to be between these two, or do you think that Milan could still get involved with all those Americans you mentioned?
Milan's a really talented team, and they're fun to watch. So I wouldn't discount them at all. But it's certainly trending, Inter and Juve. But we're barely past the halfway point, so a lot can happen, over the next few months.
And who do you think has been the best player in the Serie A this season so far?
That's a great question. I think I'm the wrong person to weigh in on that.
Okay, fair enough. I don't want to put you in an awkward position. But so to finish off, we with a little bit of fun, we play this rapid fire game where I just give you 2 or more options and you pick one. And you don't need to give an explanation if you don't want to, but if you do, it's perfectly fine, okay?
Got it. Let's do it.
So, Diego Maradona or Pele?
Pele.
Roberto Baggio, Francesco Totti, or Alessandro Del Piero?
Del Piero.
Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi?
Messi.
Paolo Maldini or Franco Baresi?
Maldini.
Who will win the Serie A this season, Inter or Juve?
Inter.
Serie A team to win the Champions League this season, or the Azzurri to win Euro 2024?
Wow, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go national team.
Nice one. And finally, probably the most contentious question I've asked you today: pineapple on pizza, food heaven or food hell?
Food hell.
That's the right answer.
I know my audience.
Yes, you do. You sure do. Thank you so much for coming on, Andy. If you have a social media account where people can follow you personally or something else you want to plug, please, the floor is yours.
I'm not so active on after working in social for 12 years, I'm kind of retired.
I hear you. I hear you. Thank you so much, Andy. Again, everybody else, we'll be back tomorrow with a full episode for patrons only. So go to patreon.com/TIFB. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Ciao, ciao.